Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from IrishSportsDaily.com. I am your host, Greg Flammang, and with me, as always, is Jamie Uyeyama, Mr. Jamie University. It is Tuesday, March 31st. We're going to recap the Notre Dame women's basketball season, which ended over the weekend against the number one seed in the tournament, UConn, which is kind of expected. They were 28 or 27-point underdogs in that game. They ended up covering, but wasn't good enough to advance to the Final Four. So we'll talk about that. We're going to talk about some recruiting. Isaiah Rodgers, running back, committed to Notre Dame yesterday. We're going to watch his highlight tape. We're going to break him down. Jamie will give us his comp as far as his Film Don't Lie comp that everyone is always kind of anticipating. And then we're going to talk about some wide receivers, wide receiver recruiting as it relates to the wide receiver depth chart currently at Notre Dame, because I think those two things are a little bit connected there, and other spring topics that come up. They're going to be a very fun show today. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you like what you hear, please hit that like button. Please hit subscribe, and please hit the notification bell so you know whenever it is we are going live. And as always, the show is brought to you by ESQ Clothing. The ad read is not popped up, Jamie. It is not popping up. It's very unfortunate. Here we go. The show is brought to you by ESQ Clothing, founded by Notre Dame alum Ge Wang. You've seen ESQ on all of your favorite Notre Dame players and coaches, from All-Americans to All-Pros and associates to CEOs. You're in great hands with ESQ's custom clothing. Whether you're looking for the perfect fitting suit, a standout sport coat, or a perfect tuxedo for wedding galas, ESQ's master tailors blend traditional hand stitching in each garment with Italy and England's best fabrics. Check out God's amazing work at esqclothing.com and book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention ISD and get 10% off your entire purchase. That's esqclothing.com. I mentioned before, Jamie, the women's basketball team lost in the Elite Eight to UConn, the number one seed in the tournament. UConn is undefeated. I think that was expected. I think the fact that they reached the Elite Eight was quite an accomplishment for this group in particular. I thought the Sweet 16 game against Vanderbilt was one of the best individual performances that I've ever seen from Hannah Hidalgo. Had a triple-double with the steals component, making up the triple 11 steals on the game. She also had, I think it was 8 assists, so she was 2 assists shy of a quadruple-double. Everyone was raving about her online, the performance she put in. I think that looking at the roster, looking at, how things went with injuries, like Leah Macy, freshman, never was able to play this year because of injury. I think making the Elite Eight is something that is a big accomplishment for them. Obviously, it's disappointing overall for the program because you want to go further than that, right? I think Notre Dame holds themselves as a type of program that wants to be making the Final Four. But what were your thoughts on the women's basketball season as it wrapped up?
Well, we kind of hit on it the last time we talked about it. Like, to turn it around like they did during the season, like there's that piece where it's like KK Bransford's mom didn't believe in them or whatever, right? And I mean, I think it's incredible what they did to finish the season. I think you look at just everything from how they closed out the regular season, the ACC, how they took Duke to the wire, another Elite Eight team to the wire in the ACC tournament. They went and absolutely, like, even if you compare how they played against UConn when they just got absolutely annihilated earlier in the year.
Like, didn't belong on the same court.
Didn't belong in the same court. It was kind of similar to that, maybe not quite as bad, but similar to the Syracuse game where UConn just destroyed Syracuse in the NCAA tournament. And, that's the kind of case where you could see that happening in a lot of cases, but I think UConn is a great team. They're an amazing team. I didn't think Notre Dame had the team that could beat them. To be like competitive with them, I think says a lot. To go and beat Vandy. Vandy had a fantastic year, and like you said, Hannah Hidalgo, like, just incredible. Like, deserved all the praise that she was getting, and what a performance. And somebody asked, yes, she does have another year. So
she does have another year.
She does have another year.
It is kind of nervous time a little bit. She's signaling, like every signal she's putting out there is like she's going to be back at Notre Dame. You know, there's rumors out there that are just kind of rumors, and they come up this time of year, especially with a player of her caliber.
Yeah.
So we'll monitor, but as for right now, like there's no real reason to believe she's not going to be at Notre Dame next year.
Well, it was like kind of like the thing with Olivia Miles, where all of a sudden it was just like, well, she's going to the W, and then, well, no, she's going to stay, but not stay at Notre Dame, and then she's going to go to TCU, right? So who knows? But I mean,
who lost by 26 points yesterday?
Yes, and I think most people would admit felt pretty good that happened, that they didn't make it to the Final Four.
You hate to see it. You hate to see that.
I mean, Hannah Hidalgo, I think, you know, and there's who's the best Notre Dame women's basketball player of all time. I mean, it's kind of impossible to say because it's like different eras and all of this, and like it's going to be awfully tough if Hannah Hidalgo comes back and has another similar type of year or even better year. She probably is the best Notre Dame women's basketball player ever. Like it's going to be hard to top.
Yeah.
Arike Ungwale, like obviously you can't beat her.
I mean, her moments are, it's one of those things, like she has the moments that really, I mean, she won a national title, hit game winners in the Final Four and the championship game.
Nothing can surpass that.
Yeah.
You know, like, well, I guess maybe Hannah could do it next year or something. But unless she does that, it's impossible. I mean, I don't even know if there's too many people in the history of college basketball, men's or women's, that have had those moments as big as Arike. Like, and you can't like erase like Ruth Riley and how dominant she was when they won their first national championship. Like, and it's crazy because I just was looking at this WNBA and post of like, you didn't know all these people were teammates, even though I was like, I think most people knew these people were teammates, but so many of those Notre Dame teams were just stacked with just like, 4 or 5 WNBA players on these teams. And it's just one of these things where it's hard to say who's the best, and they're getting into it as well. But Hannah Hidalgo, absolutely just one of the greats. And I would be surprised based on how everything she said, like you said, if she left. It seems like she really wants to kind of finish it off right. And I think with the way the season went and how close, the team got as the season went on too. Like I saw that Kiki Bransford said she's going to come back for another year. I assume Cass Prosper is probably going to come back for another year too. So if they're all back, I think it would be awfully tough to see Hannah Hidalgo go. I mean, I guess someone could give her a big check and something, whatever, who knows, but hope she's back. It was really fun to root for them. Really fun to root for them in this final stretch when things weren't looking so good during the season. So great way to finish. Love to see them getting over the hump in Sweet 16 too. That was awesome.
Yeah, especially in the manner that it happened. I mean, 5'6" guard, scored 14 baskets, every single one in the paint. 28 points in the paint for a 5'6" guard in a game like that, where Vanderbilt's got some trees in there. Her floor game was incredible. I mean, to distribute it as much as well as she did in that game. Like Notre Dame couldn't hit a three, right? Like a couple of those, she had assists sitting there. All good shots too. It just didn't happen for them, but they found a way to win the game. Defensively, she's third in the country in scoring, and she was doing what she was doing in defensively in that game, where Vanderbilt was completely discombobulated by everything that she was doing. It didn't matter who she was guarding. Ge Uyeyama said it. He just like, you can't. you have to take the player that she's guarding and try to hide that player in the corner so that she's not involved. Because so much of her defensive stuff comes off ball. Just incredible, like an incredible competitor.
Yeah.
I when I interviewed her, I straight up told her, like, you're one of the best competitors I've ever seen. And it's like, it was weird for me to just outright tell her that, but it was a true thing. I just wanted to put it out there, like, just the way her energy, and the last couple of years, her first 2 years at Notre Dame, she fell apart efficiency wise from February on. She just wasn't the same player. A Sweet 16 loss in her freshman year. I think she was 4 of 17. Last year, I think she was 3 of 19 or something like that. And then in this Sweet 16, she's 14 of 25 or whatever it is, 31 points and triple double. It's just unbelievable the way that she's
evolved so much as a player too. I think it's just like I think the one thing too, not to get, I mean, I'm sure people are like, get the footballs with some of these people.
Yeah.
Just last thing, I would say she showed she's a true point guard this year and was absolutely a true point guard, which will only help, her in the eyes of WNBA people too as well. But it's hard because with her and Olivia Miles in the court, Olivia Miles is a point guard. Like, she has to have the ball. Olivia Miles is not an off the ball player. She can't play off the ball. Hannah can play, but she's better on the ball with the ball in her hands and be able to create. And so I think it showed. It was completely her team. Love to watch her play.
Yeah. All right. So kudos to the ladies for getting it done, getting to the late 8, and hopefully they can reload for next year. All right, let's get to recruiting. Isaiah Rogers commits to Notre Dame, the second commitment in about a week for the Irish in the running back position. Lathan Wissington, Christian McCollum reported Notre Dame's going to be done at running back, so this is going to be Notre Dame's running back class. Isaiah Rogers and Lathan Wissington. Talk about Rogers, what you like about him. I mean, I think he's not the highest rated player, which kind of, people don't really like, but there's things we like about him. And let's talk about his game.
Yeah, well, I mean, he is a 4-star. It's like the thing is too, is that it's like, it becomes like where guys like not rated high enough now.
Also, rankings are a sham.
Yes. And also too, it's, who cares about the ranking now when it doesn't matter? Like, a guy plays his senior season and then he can go rise up to whatever. Like, that's just, it doesn't matter. Or get to campus and then all of a sudden you're like, wow, this guy's a baller.
Yeah.
So, I do think, I think he's a really intriguing pickup, because I wasn't like blown away by him at all when I first watched him. And I want to say that I was like, on second watch, I was blown away either, but he did grow on me more as a prospect. And I think he's a really good running back. Like, I think he has good vision. I think he has above average feet. I don't think he's dynamic with his burst in any way. I don't think there's that. So I think he's got build up speed, which you can see here. Like, if he gets space, he can take it, and he's had good track times, right? Like, he's got good track times. Like those 55-meter times, like you said, that's like kind of what you're looking for actually with a back anyways, is that kind of sprinters. Like, you see a guy like here, like just him build up and run away from someone. Now, do I think he's going to be a pure home run hitter at Notre Dame? I don't think has the same kind of speed as Lathan Wissington. I wouldn't put him in that category. But I'm very intrigued to see what kind of back he's going to be, because he's added 25 pounds in the last year.
Mm-hmm.
So he's 200. He was 190. He's 215 pounds right now. And he carries it well. Like, it's not like he added a lot of weight from eating too much Chick-fil-A or Burger King. Like, he's built, and he is physically very going to be college ready. He's going to be college ready when he gets to campus. So I want to see kind of how that translate to the field this year, because I think I want to see him like run through tackles more. I want to see what that looks like. He's obviously like super productive in his college. He should dominate in the league that he's in. But he's someone he had like over 1,300 all-purpose yards last year, close to 400 yards receiving. You know, he had over 30 catches. Like, that's not something that a lot of high school running backs have. They don't have that part of their game. So I think there's a lot to like about him. I know certainly like Notre Dame really likes him, and they like, you know, obviously they have to really like him. Once they already take Wissington, you know that if you take Rogers, that's it.
Yeah.
You're done. And so they could either, usually what happens is you say, okay, well, we got our one guy, we really like him, and we're going to take the next guy we're going to take. It's got to be a guy that we think can be a home run, because we can wait and we can be patient. We can say, hey, we only have one spot left. This is who we want, blah, blah, blah. So I think from that point of view, people could say, well, why didn't they go after this guy? Why didn't they get Trace Aguirre, who they just had campus? They were bringing other guys on campus. Why didn't they look at those guys first? It's like, they obviously decided like Rogers, that's the guy they want. That he's the guy. So I'm intrigued by that. I'm intrigued by, I think my comp for him was Katron Allen, who Jawan Sider coached at Penn State, who's another guy who's not super flashy, definitely not someone who's going to go and win the underwear Olympics at the combine. Not one of those guys, but he's a pretty darn good running back and was a way better player than Nick Singleton.
Yeah.
And Nick Singleton was more explosive, could do more, you know, maybe break the long one a little bit more, all that kind of stuff. Katron Allen ended up being a better running back than him and way more productive than him at Penn State. And I think that's kind of where I see Rogers, if he's at his peak and who he can become, is a guy like Katron
Allen. It's one of these things, like, as far as the rankings go, like I just watch the tape, you know, and I don't really get into like, I don't really look at their like 247 profile or anything because I just don't really care. And so when I watch, so I guess sometimes when there's players, there's reaction to players like Wissington, like everyone was kind of like, you know, he's not Notre Dame's top or whatever. And it's like, I don't know. I mean, they took him. So wherever they think he is, like, it's one thing if you're like, there's 4 backs, let's just say, and they take the 4th back on their board or whatever. It's like, yeah, but they took him. If they didn't really like him, they wouldn't take the commitment. You know, like some players don't have committable offers right now. These two obviously do. So with Rogers, like I just look at it like I know they had to have pushed for him, because if they weren't totally sure, they wouldn't have pushed, and they just slow play it and just like just wait, you know. But they didn't do that. So obviously, like I think like everyone is a big fan of Trey Segura. I think both of us are big fans of Trey Segura, right? So it has nothing to do with them. But the fact that Notre Dame knew, like, hey, he's interested in us, but also we're willing to take this commitment and close our class at running back. They obviously feel good about him, right?
Yeah.
And that's not, sometimes you get into this this thing where it's like, oh, trust the coaches. It's not trusting the coaches. You have to acknowledge the fact that they have made a decision on the type of player that this is. So you just look for like, well, why would they do that? You know, the fact that he's caught 30 passes, like 30 passes for a high school running back is a lot.
It's a lot.
Like it's a lot, you know? And so I just, he has that in his bag. I'm very interested in the track time stuff. Like if he runs this spring outdoors, I'll bet you he's in the 10.9s. Bet you he's in the 10.9s, maybe 10.8s. I don't think he's a 10.7 guy. That's just my opinion. So that's kind of floating out there. The 60-meter times are just like indicative to me, or the 55-meter times are indicative to me of like a 10.9, 10.8 guy, which is fine if you're going to be 215.
If you're 215 and you run a 10.9, that's fine. A good time.
Yeah, that's completely, that works. You know, that is a guy who can get into the secondary and damage teams. Will he get caught 60, 70 yards down the field? Possibly. right? But again, someone who has a track background is less apt to do that because they have that long speed. They've trained for it, right? So I like the guy. I think he's a good football player, not in comparison to anybody else, because he's who Notre Dame has chosen, and he's chosen Notre Dame. So I just look at his skill set, and I mean, this works for me, especially with Wissington, who is 100% a verified 10-5 guy who can scoot. You know, if it's these two guys, one of them, they're both sub 11. They both have good size. And, you know, the fact that he's gotten bigger and he's retained his speed, we talked about it on Power Hour yesterday. I'm like, man, that's a green light for me. So I'm a big fan of his game. You know, I think he's a good running back, like you said. He's not perfect, but also he can develop in that way. And their feet, like this is why Ge Wang makes a lot of money. You know.
By the way, Kedron Young was 11.18 in 100 meters, but he was like 220 pounds. Like, and so it was seen as like, I think people always just look at it and they think like this person has to be this, and it's like, no, it's different. Like when you're looking at like running backs compared to receivers and DBs is different.
Yes.
Then you look at it. It's all of that too. And yeah, I don't know. I think he's a good back. And I'm excited to kind of see where, you know, what kind of steps he takes as a senior. And I will say that it's just been a thing with pretty much the whole entire Marcus Freeman era. Very few guys that they take at this point don't really have like a big jump as a senior. It is one of these things where they do a really good job of identifying talent. And I'm not just saying that it's like, because obviously it was different times where it's like, well, that was, you know, now's Mike Martin and, you know, some of the personnel people have changed and all that. Yeah, that's true. But, you know, Freeman is the constant. And that's just one thing that you've seen is that they do a pretty good job of being like, this guy's a player and understanding what a guy can, not just what a guy is, but what he can become.
Yeah. Let's move on to wide receiver. Julian Caldwell was just on campus. So, you know, he enjoyed his time there. Cade Cooper was on campus and they're excited about him. Right. And there's someone that I feel like they want to land. He's a bigger wide receiver on that front. Obviously, Julius Jones Jr. is sitting out there. And there's a lot of kind of consternation about the lack of numbers in possibilities at the wide receiver position right now, I think, especially as it relates to like other positions. I want to go over Notre Dame's depth chart at wide receiver because I think those two things might be a little bit related. You have Jordan Faison, who will be out of eligibility this year. Jaden Greathouse is not out of eligibility, but I do feel like whatever happens, like this is his last season at Notre Dame, whether he goes pro or whether he goes somewhere else, because he made a big mention of like, hey, I want to get my degree from Notre Dame. After this year, he can get his degree from Notre Dame, I believe, because he was an early enrollee. So I assume in the spring of next spring, he can get his degree. Okay. They have 17 scholarship receivers right now, or 17 receivers on the roster. And so if you lose those two guys, that's 15. Okay. When you look at like between Jerome Bettis Jr., Elijah Burris, Dylan Faison, freshman, Caden Finley, Devin Fitzgerald, Bubba Frazier, Micah Gilbert. You have Matt Jeffrey, Mylan Graham, Quincy Porter, Braden Robinson, Logan Saldate, Cam Williams. Those are your scholarship guys. That's a lot of guys. It's a lot of guys with multiple years, and it's a lot of guys who it's like you can slot them in at a lot of positions, right? You're not really hurting for a slot. You're not really hurting for a boundary. You're not hurting for a field. You're not hurting for any of that stuff. So in my opinion, that's why I think we're seeing a little bit less on the wide receivers and targeting guys that it's like we think we can land, we can get this done, because the wide receiver room is stocked with young talent. Like a lot of guys you feel good about. Like of all those guys who I just said, where it's like, we haven't heard like glowing things. One of them is Dylan Faison. I think, because is he with lacrosse right now?
Yeah, he's not even really. He's with lacrosse.
Yeah, he's with lacrosse.
That's why we're not hearing anything. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's Braden Robinson, who is hurt, so he's not practicing. Everybody else, we've heard positive things about Cam Williams. We've heard positive things about all the freshmen who are out there right now. We've heard positive things about Logan Saldate. We've heard positive things about Elijah Burris. When we look at Jerome Bettis Jr., who looks good, right? You look at Micah Gilbert, who looks good. So, and then that Mylan Graham and Quincy Porter are sitting out there as well. So to me, I think that the lack of urgency in terms of numbers in recruiting could stem from the fact that, man, that position is very well stocked going forward. You want to get a couple of guys for sure, but it's like I don't think they're going to bring in huge numbers.
And the fact that they now seem very open to taking undergrad transfers.
Yeah.
So there's that. They don't have to just take graduate transfers. And even if they were going to take a graduate transfer for like they needed an instant player, like an instant starter, they could probably find somebody. Like wide receiver is one area where it is always going to have numbers in the portal. You're always going to have those options. So, I mean, that's basically how they got by the last, few years really is based on the portal. So I think it's not from that perspective too. I almost think that I know they signed 5, last year. You probably never need to sign 5. Like you could probably sign 3 to 4 every year and just keep it at that, because you always have the option of the portal there. And you could kind of take it from that way, where I think it's a way better idea to, and also because receivers leave far more often. If they're not like in the mix than say offensive linemen, where guys are like willing to wait and develop. So it's like, you'd rather take numbers at offensive line and defensive line, because those guys will like stay, develop. There's obviously like defensive line, there's rotation and all that kind of stuff too. I think that's a pretty good point though, about like just where they're at and how they kind of approach it too, because I know that Quinn Burrell is, I saw him tweet out that he's going to be on campus. I think today or tomorrow or something like that. Mm-hmm. So, and to me, like Quinn Burrell, he's probably a boundary as well. But that's where Cade Cooper's is a boundary. And I don't know. I think they can just take guys, whoever they think is the best guy. They don't have to be like, we need a slot. We need it, whatever. Yeah. I think they can just say, these are the 3 guys we like the most, or 3 guys we have the best chance at that we think they're going to develop into something. They don't have to do that, where I think previously they were at a point where it's like, they're desperate for boundary. They need this. Or, man, we don't have enough speed here. We got to get like, and that's kind of how they had to approach it. And they just don't have to do that anymore. I just don't think they're at a point. And obviously things can flip. All of a sudden, a bunch of guys transfer out, and that could change things. But just in terms of where they're at right now, I think they're in a really good spot.
How much do you like how these freshmen look, Jamie? I mean, with Caden Finley, Devin Fitzgerald, Bubba Frazier. Haven't seen Braden Robinson, haven't seen Dylan Faison, but I mean, they look like hits. Like sometimes, like we mentioned it before, when like at this point when you first see freshmen and just it's like indie and it's not even team stuff. Sometimes you can see them in indie and it's like they need a couple years. None of those guys look like that. I mean, they need years because the guys ahead of them are just too far advanced. And so it's just like a different level. But just watching them move around, there's not one of those guys. And that was the other part. Like, we can just go down this thing. Like, I think from a physical standpoint, Jerome Bettis looks ready. There's a technical aspect to wide receiver that I think he still needs to get to. But Elijah Burris, is there any concern about him being a good college football player in your mind?
No, he's going to be a good college football player. It's just like, it's kind of a matter of when, not if.
Right? Like Logan Saldate. Like, I think he can be whatever KK Smith was last year. I think Logan Saldate can do this year.
100%. And that's why KK Smith is, not to be crude about it, but expendable. Like, they didn't need to keep him.
That's why he probably felt like, I need to go somewhere where they don't have all these players who, like, we've said it before, when you can get to a point on a roster where it's like, look, I love to compete, but you have to be honest about the fact that, like, I can watch this guy and these guys, they deserve to be on the field too.
Yeah.
And it's like, and they deserve to be on the field and they will get on the field. I need to go somewhere where I know my snaps are going to be there.
Yeah.
And they don't have Logan Saldate sitting there, and they don't have Elijah Burris sitting there. Right. Like, there's competing. And then there's like, hey, I got to know, like, I understand those guys are awesome.
Yeah.
And it's just too hard.
Can you put up Sam K's about Burris?
Sure.
Yeah. Because, okay.
The comment is, my worry about Burris is they might not stick around long enough for his breakout to be at Notre Dame.
You know what? That could happen. And it could happen with a bunch of guys. But I think the thing is now, and I'll bring up Jadon Blair is a perfect example of, I don't think because Jadon Blair didn't hit at Notre Dame, like, that he might end up being a really good player at Missouri or the next school after. I don't know. Right. He might end up being a really good player, might be an NFL player. I think the thing is now is that you have to look at it where Notre Dame before, guys would leave and it was like, well, if they left early, it was like, maybe they just weren't a fit, or they ever just found out it's like Notre Dame wasn't for them, or they were kind of always pulled away and they wanted to go, or they were never going to play at Notre Dame. And so no matter how long they waited, they were never going to play. And I think most guys who transferred out, that was kind of the story. Like, during the entire BK years, I would say, right? It's like, guys just like, it is never going to happen for them, and they just were out. And I think now there's just going to be more guys that end up becoming pretty good players at other places, just because they can't beat, just because like Jadon Blair can't beat out Ethan Long to be like the next safety in that class, and because Joey O'Brien's coming along and Pouncey and all that, right? That doesn't mean they're not going to be a good player somewhere else. Like, and that wasn't really the case before, right? And I think you could even say too, with like, it is a bit different with, I think, some of the guys like, Coogan going and being like, well, he started at Notre Dame and then he goes to Indiana, whatever, right? It's like, well, he had this, but I think you're going to see just more of these guys who are young who leave, because there's always going to be guys who leave after a year. It happens every year. By the way, Notre Dame is like, basically, in terms of players who transfer out, I believe they're like right at the average of like the average number who transfer out every year. They're not having more, they're not having less, they're just like right at the average. It's just to the point where the roster is just so much deeper. There's going to be good players who just would never play at Notre Dame. Or maybe they would, but they don't want to wait. And I get it. Like, I totally get it, because there's only so much time, right? And or even a guy like, like Coogan or Josh Burnham. Yeah, they can play at Notre Dame. They did play at Notre Dame, but they're going to play more somewhere else. So you can't blame him for that. And it's just one of these things too, where like with Mylan Graham and Quincy Porter, I mean, those could be 2 starters for Notre Dame this year. Could happen. At the same time, it could not happen. And they don't. And then all of a sudden, Micah Gilbert is the guy. And he's that guy. And then it's like, well, where does Quincy Porter fit in? And all this kind of, again, with Coach Hump, it's first world problems. That's just the reality of it. And that's the thing, right? Where I always thought like one of these things, and don't get me wrong, like Nick Saban, they used to like just run guys off and cut guys who just didn't have it. And a lot of guys who left Bama didn't turn out. But when Bama was like Alvin Kamara, I remember Alvin Kamara was at Bama, and then he just went to Tennessee, and all of a sudden he's like amazing. You're like, oh wow, this guy can get on the field at Bama, and like, and he's still like one of the best guys in the NFL. You're just like, yeah, that's just how good Bama is, and he just could, all of a sudden he could be like the featured guy at Tennessee and all that. And I'm not saying Notre Dame is at that Bama level where they're going to have a guy who's like Alvin Kamara level who transfers out, because that, like, I want to get ahead of myself, but it's different now than it was at the time that Marcus Freeman first came to Notre Dame.
Yeah. I mean, it's like Jamison Williams goes from Ohio State reserve to 1,400 yards at Alabama, right? I don't think Notre Dame has that. Right. I don't, maybe someone like Elijah Burris, if he was to leave, and we're saying this because he was brought up in the chat. I don't think Elijah Burris there's like eminence of him leaving the program or anything. But like, I don't think there's anyone like that. Like, I don't think KK Smith is going to go like be a first round pick at Texas Tech. Maybe he has a good season, but I just don't think he's that good. But the point is like, yeah, you're going to lose good players now. Whereas before, especially at the wide receiver position, it was this guy has to play, because there's no one else behind, and that was obviously not a healthy situation. This is not it. Like if you the only way you get on the field is if you beat out the other guys who are really good. And that's exactly, every roster wants that, right? Every team wants that type of situation. And so, I think it's a good spot for wide receiver right now in terms of numbers. And I think the recruiting kind of reflects that. It's like they don't have the biggest board. Now they obviously have to land their guys, right? Like if they don't land Cade Cooper, who I like a lot, there's a lot of like Boykin to me in his game. And I think there's a lot more too. Like, sometimes when I see a bunch of contested catches on a high school tape, I think, well, I'd like it if we were separating, because these are high school corners you're going against, usually not like everyone's Kari Adams or whatever. But when I watch his tape, it's like I see separation and then he's kind of thrown into a contested situation, which is, again, high school quarterbacks, right? Like not everyone's going to be CJ Carr. So I like him a lot. And so I think that's a good player should Notre Dame land him.
Outbound has this thing about when the thing about guys not knowing the playbook and that being on the coaches or whatever. Do you see that one?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah. So I get where fans get frustrated that some guy can't find a role because of that or whatever. Like, but it's just it's the nature of it. It's one thing to say if team isn't talented and the guys who are starting are studs or there. It's not the same. Like, first of all, you have to know the playbook. If you don't know the playbook and all you can do is run and go, well, then the other team knows that all you can do is run and go. And that's it. And obviously, look at Chris. We've mentioned the whole time about Chris Brown when that initial, freshman year, right? Where he ran, obviously caught that big ball against Oklahoma. And there was Golden Tate in the Charlie Whites when he was a freshman and all that, right? Yeah, of course. There's going to be guys like that who can do those certain things. But the guys that they have starting can all run goes too. And then they can do everything else too. So it's not as just simple as get this guy in the field. He can be faster than everyone else. If Cam Williams was consistently cooking guys deep, and we just praised Cam Williams, so I don't even want to. I'm just mentioning because they were specifically mentioned Cam Williams. If he was consistently cooking guys deep, but that's all he could do, they would put him out there and have him doing it all the time. This is why too, and I know it's a fan. You guys are fans. Everybody's passionate about it. It was just as simple as that. They do it. These guys aren't stupid. Like they're not trying to keep someone who's great at something off the field. If Steve Filer actually was this actual crazy linebacker or whatever, but that is the guy that people think, man, they should have done something. It's like, well, he's got to be able to do more. And I think too, they have done a pretty good job of like, hey, this guy's young. We're going to find him a role. And they do that. And I think good coaches do that. But like James Flammang was a perfect example last year. If they would have kept playing, he would have been a weapon as a blocker and he would have done all these things. They would have done a lot of different things in the running game with him. Right. But they didn't really get that opportunity because of the 4 games and they didn't play in the playoff. But he wasn't quite ready to run the whole offense and do the whole thing or be a featured guy. So you can't throw somebody in before they're ready. And you can't throw somebody in who's just, this guy's going to run 5 plays if they know what the 5 plays are, or if somebody else can just do something better than them. Right. So it's just not as simple. I totally get why people just want to scream and say that's the case. But I just know that coaches do find we've seen it enough that coaching staffs do find specific roles for freshmen, for guys who don't know the playbook as well or whatever. They'll find roles for them, but you better be able to do that one role really, really, really well, or else you're not going to play. It's like if Logan Thomas is the actual best edge rusher on the team, well, guess what? If it's 3rd and long, he's going to be in the game. I don't care that he weighs 225 pounds. He will play in the game. He will get in there. But if he's not, then he's not going to play. They're going to play the other guys who are better. That's just what the bottom line is.
So every time this happens, every time there's something like this and somebody says, why don't you just run a go? Just because he doesn't run the playbook, doesn't know the playbook, right? The assumption is always that it will work. If they just run the go or they just do whatever, and it doesn't matter, it will work, right? But like you said, they do this stuff in practice. If it doesn't work in practice, then they're not going to do it in the game, right? You wouldn't do this for anybody else. If it did consistently work in practice, then you would then do it in the game. So they rep all this stuff, right? If he's running goes again, because here's the other part, right? You'll be doing this against backups. If you're running goes against backups all the time and you're cooking them, then they'll put you up against, Christian Gray or Leonard Moore, whoever it is. And if you're cooking them, they'll put you in the game and do it. Even if you don't know the playbook, they will do that. But if you don't do it in practice against backups, then they're not going to do it in the game. That's exactly. Just how that's how that works. Like there is no, well, you're highly rated and therefore you must be X thing. Once you get on campus, either you can do it or you can't.
Yeah.
The coaches don't care where someone's rated. They might care in the sense that like they'll give you the opportunities in practice because you're highly rated or whatever it might be. But if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And they're not going to do it. Why would they do that? They wouldn't, So I think that kind of thing always comes from the assumption of, well, it's going to work out. That's how they score a touchdown. Like I guarantee you the Chris Brown rule, they kept doing it in practice and he kept catching bombs. So they said, all right, we'll do it in a game.
Yeah.
And so
exactly.
If you rep it in practice and it works, you do it in the game. If it doesn't work, then you don't do it in the game.
Here's the perfect example. Jordan Faison, walk on, earns a scholarship in camp because he's beating Notre Dame starters in one-on-ones. They're like, holy crap. This guy who's got a lacrosse scholarship, who walking on the football team, this guy's just making plays in practice the whole time. You know who was in the same freshman class as him? Braylon James. Braylon James, is he still at TCU? Maybe. I don't know. Has he done anything? Who's had the better career? One guy was like a top 100 recruit who had all the track times. I mean, I think Chauncey Stuckey compared him to Randy Moss in the thing.
Yeah.
Which is insane. Please do not do that, coaches. Don't do that to a kid because it was unfair to him. And now it looks now people will associate him with that. If he was that guy, he would have played. But Faison was the guy who was actually doing it when they were putting in pads. And to the point that they were like, man, this guy's got to play over all these guys who were recruited way ahead of him. And this guy wasn't even recruited. Like, so that's how it works. You got to earn it. You have to earn it. And these guys are in the business of winning. They want to win. They want to do whatever it takes to win. So if they think if they see a guy who's doing something against, like you said, all of a sudden you're with the threes, man, you just start beating the threes in practice all the time. Then you get up to the twos. This guy's dominating the twos. Get to the ones. Okay. Well, now he's still making plays against the ones.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Yeah. Chief Brody says, my point is there's been plenty of times they are overthinking things and have been wrong. Those are the coaches. What I'm telling you is if you ever have a situation where you think, why don't they play this guy or why don't they try this? The answer is always, almost always, because they tried it in practice and it didn't work.
Yes.
That is almost always the answer. It just, coaches are not going to just throw things out in a game that aren't working when they practice. It's so that's the reason. Like I can't go specifics because I'm not at practice, but like I always default to, well, they must be trying it and it's not working in practice. They must be trying him at this and it's not working in practice.
Also, what are the examples of where they've overthink things? And
the example that he gave was Sam Hartman. They were dropping him back and they wanted him doing full field reads and it wasn't working out. That was an example of stuff. I mean, look, not everything coaches try works. If it was, then everyone would be undefeated and everyone would have 10 yards per play. Like everything they want to do doesn't work the way that they want. That's not the point. All we're saying is when you ask the question again, why don't they do X thing? It's because they've tried X thing in practice and it doesn't work the way that they want. That's just the simple fact of it. Let's talk about the Billy Schrauth thing that was from Power Hour yesterday. It was Coach Humph that wanted to talk about Billy Schrauth and his like.
Oh yes, yeah. Thanks for his question yesterday.
Yeah,
Coach.
His traits and everything.
Yeah. So I think he put up like a very specific, like probably read it off a scouting report from somebody or whatever, basically about like he was a little stiff in the hips. So then his pads came up and whatever, I don't know if like I'm going to get like that specific with it. I'm just going to be honest. I don't remember too many times where I thought Billy Schrauth was too stiff to make this block and the defender got underneath him and won because of that. I watched him a lot. I don't really remember a lot of that. So I can't say specifically that's what I'm thinking. But as I kind of said on Power Hour, I think he isn't the same kind of athlete that, say, Knapp is a better athlete than him. Like he's got better feet than him. And one of the things too that I think feet and hips and all that kind of stuff, that matters more for zone blocking. Like it's critical because you're basically got to get your hips around a guy to block him on a reach block. And for people that don't know what a reach block is, if a guy's lined up outside me and and he's trying to get to that outside, well, I have to reach around him and cut that off from him. Cut that off from him getting there. So that's a tough block to make for any offensive line, especially because you consider defensive linemen generally are better athletes than the offensive linemen. So that's a tough block for anyone. And I don't know if Billy Schrauth, I didn't think he was like bad at zone blocking or anything like that, but I don't think that was like his strength. I don't think that's what he was best at. I think what he was best at was when they were running duo, when they were running any kind of gap scheme where he's blocking down or kicking out or whatever, because he could move somebody at the point of attack. He was a powerful dude who could move people at the point of attack. He was mean. He was just one of those guys, point A to point B against that person's will. Very good at that. And saw it a lot in that USC game. And also too, they ran a lot of zone in that game too, and he looked pretty darn good. So it's not just that, but I think that's what he's best at. So if he goes to a team that is primarily like a gap running team, I think he is going to have a lot of success. I think that is the perfect kind of fit for him. And I think when people look at where somebody goes in the NFL draft or what kind of player someone's going to be, how that guy fits into the scheme and whether or not like this is like highlight somebody's strengths, that matters. And obviously that's on teams to find who's the best fit for their scheme and who can really succeed doing what they want to do. And obviously too, you have good teams adjust to the guys that they have. So some team might not be like run as much, gap blocking. Maybe they do more zone, but then they get a guy like Billy Schrauth and maybe they have another guard and they say, okay, well, we're going to run more gap stuff because these guys are really, really good at it. So that can happen too. I think that regardless, I think he can't play in any scheme, but I think he's best at gap blocking. And I saw like Matt Miller from ESPN had like a mock 7-round draft, and he was like, had Billy Schrauth going at the end of the 5th. Listen, I have no idea where any of these guys are going to go. Like, other than that like Jeremiah Love's going to go high. I would love to say, well, Jadarian Price is going to go somewhere in the 2nd round. Sure. But we don't know that there might be something happens and some guy drops because of nowhere. Okay. We'll find out. If Billy Schrauth goes late in the 5th round, so he's almost a 6th round pick, that's a friggin' steal because he's going to start games in the NFL. And if you draft a guy who's going to start for you at some point on his rookie contract, and he will, then that GM is going to get that's a win. That is a huge win for him. And I think he has a chance to be like a plus starter in the NFL, and not just because of his ability, but also guys are hurt all the time in the NFL. He knows how to play hurt and can play at a high level hurt. So I'm a big fan of Billy Schrauth, and I think he's going to have a pretty good career. Given his if he can stay healthy enough, that's always the thing with any kind of football player. But I think he's going to be a good player in the NFL for many years.
7-round mock drafts are insane. Like, that's insane. Like, why? What are you doing, man? And here's how I look at it, right? Here's how I look at it, okay? So what Malachi Fields was a 3rd rounder in that. I think he was like the 71st pick or something like that.
Or something like that.
3rd round, top of the 3rd round. Billy Schrauth was end of the 5th. If I asked you in 5 years, who is more likely to be a like entrenched starter in the NFL? Would you say it's Malachi Fields or Billy Schrauth?
I would say Billy Schrauth.
I would say Billy Schrauth, right? And that's kind of like why it was insane to me that Xavier Watts it went in the 3rd round or whatever he went. It's like he's going to start for you guys. Like, what are you doing? Like, he's going to start for you. So pick him or don't. But there's a starter at safety sitting there, and it's the 3rd round. Like, that's kind of how I look at it. You know, in terms of just like, sure, pick him in the 5th round. But he's like Billy Schrauth is going to be like Robert Hainsey. He's just a starter, you know. Jarrett Patterson is just a starter. And Aaron Banks, starter, you know. So I think it's unfortunate for Schrauth because he got hurt and he didn't get to kind of extend on the on his great performance against USC.
Somewhat related to this, and this is how I've been thinking about it for a while, and I don't know if you feel the same way, Greg, but I think the boundary receiver, like the big-bodied boundary receiver, the Malachi Fields type, the Miles Boykin, the Chase Claypool, and obviously like Boykin and Claypool were high picks, right? But and Claypool had phenomenal rookie year, but obviously it didn't go well from there.
It was a little. There's a maturity issue there.
Yeah, and he's had a lot of mental health problems too. But you know, Boykin, I mean, hey, he played I don't know how many years in the NFL. Hey, that's a win. But I'm just saying in terms of being, you know, you hope that someone who's like a 3rd round player,
you want them to start.
You want them to be a starter at some point and be like a whatever, right? And it just never happened for him. I just think that the days of that player in college football, that big bodied boundary receiver who can get vertical, is still a super valuable player in college football. How many of those guys end up being good in the NFL? And I'm not just talking about the Notre Dame guys, I'm talking about everybody. Very few of them. And I think about someone like Mike Williams, the Clemson receiver who was at with the Chargers for years and whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying he didn't have a good career. He had probably had double-digit touchdowns a couple times in his career, right? Like he had a pretty good career, but he was never quite like, for being a guy who was, I think he was a top 10 or top 15 pick. He was never quite like, he's not going to the Hall of Fame. He's not one of like that levels. I don't know if he ever made a Pro Bowl, whatever. Like he wasn't quite that, or like an Alshon Jeffrey was another guy. Certainly had his moments in the NFL, but there's just not a lot of those guys who are dominant guys in the NFL. I just think it's really hard to be a jump ball receiver and just be dominant. Like you either have to be Larry Fitz and just have like the insane best hands of all time. Like, and you can just win and all this. Because if you can't separate and you can't do some of these other things, man, it's just tough. The corners are too good.
And the windows are too small. Yeah.
Yeah. So
you just got to be, you're talking about, you got to be like generational contested catch guy.
Yeah.
Basically.
And I just, there's, how many of those guys exist? Like, there's just not many, right? Like, and even if you were just going to say, like, look at the receivers in the Hall of Fame. And there's, I mean, I'd say in the last 20 years, there's a lot more like 6'4", 6'3" and up guys who are like big bodies. But how many of those guys were just dominant guys that have been there? Like you would say, well, I don't even know if he was 6'3", but like maybe Andre Johnson. But he seemed more than that, you know. Like he seemed he was.
Like he's a Hall of Famer because he could separate and was also
do all these things, right?
Yeah.
But it's like you can't just be like, if the main thing is you are a dominant boundary guy. I think that is still a super valuable thing in college football because the corners aren't good enough that you like.
They're not as good. Yeah,
they're not as good. So you can have guys who can win there, and that's the thing. And so. Hey, I'm rooting for Malachi Fields to have a really good career. But if the thing is, man, he's a really good contested catch guy and he's going to be this or that. If I was a GM or a personnel person, I'd be like, no way we're drafting him.
Well, that's why the 4.61 is concerning.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's just the nature of it. You got to be able to get open and separate. I mean, the good news for him is like he is a very good contested catch guy. So that's going for him for sure. I mean, he can get up, and obviously the other athletic traits are there. I think we can end it there. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. If you like what you heard, hit that like, hit subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you know whenever it is we are going live. And that is going to be tomorrow post Marcus Freeman's press conference. He's going to have a press conference after spring practice tomorrow. So we will carry that directly after. Press conference is 10 a.m. Eastern time. So basically whenever he goes off, we will go live and, talk about his comments and more spring ball. So it's gonna be a really fun show. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your day. Keep hitting and hustling.